I'm concerned because here's the thing. This is state-run government, but it is charging a fee, so we would like to assume that all the services are available. Hopefully the internet won't cut out again.
Well, gentlemen, I don't want to take away from your time, but we're getting so many messages from people that seem to have suggest that during the salient points that were critical were when we were interrupted. You were speaking about Mr. Paget Brown's contribution, and they're like, anyway, I won't belabor that, and we just offer up our apologies. We hopefully, anyway, for what it's worth, sincerely apologize for that interruption. But Johan, you maybe start with us again. I mean, this is not just about.
No, again, tomorrow is about, everybody that talks about, I'm tired of this, I'm tired of that, I'm tired of them, we need change. Tomorrow's your chance. Mm-hmm. Tomorrow is your opportunity to use your voice and for people power to really show up. Come to the polls. Use your voice at the ballot box and vote for the type of change in representation that this country desperately needs. Mm-hmm. When you consider why we're doing what we're doing, and this is the most humbling experience of my life. This is a hard job, and I commend everybody that has ever put themselves in a race like this, and especially those that have been successful. But we can't talk about change, and we can't talk about the things that we would like to see and then not show up and use that power. The difference between myself, Sammy, and our opponents is no matter what the situation is, we're going to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. There will be no spin, no misdirection, no lies, and no sort of narrative to suit an agenda. If you look at the last 4 years, the current administration, if you look at just the financial services situation, we've gone from blacklist to a grey list, and we're going to make another blacklist for the AML sort of regime in Cayman probably in about June. In any other country, when you understand what's at risk, people are held accountable. If you're a financial services employee or employer, you got to understand that we are basically harming ourselves. I think Mr. QC Ian Paget Brown highlighted some of those issues, but we have the power now tomorrow to change. If you look at your life and you ask yourself the question, is my life better today than it was over the last 4 years? If the answer is no, in Red Bay, in Georgetown, North in Georgetown, South, they're really credible quality candidates that can be your change agents that understand the status quo works for a select few, but it doesn't work for the many. And I'm going to give you an example. If you are a civil servant, right, and there's 4,500 of you in core government, about 5,500 in general, when you consider that this administration can give themselves some healthy and significant raises in pay, and then also look out for the top tier of the civil service, yet over 60% of the civil service make under $3,000 a month. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a clear indication as to who they're looking out for. At a time when Caymanians are struggling, when there's an 8% unemployment, when there are people living off of a $1,000 stipend, this administration, the PPM-led unity government, all of them in cabinet, gave themselves big raises and made sure that the heads of the civil service and the chief officers got a raise as well. What happened to the rest of you that are actually doing the work?
So this is, you referencing in addition to the severance package, for want of a better term.
In addition to the severance package, which is probably the most generous severance package that I'm aware of. It goes far beyond what the labour law is. They've given themselves a severance package that and some of them will need it after tomorrow. But my point is, you cannot have 60% of the civil service earning under $3,000 a month, and then the top tier and the elected officials give themselves a 17% raise. That's just wrong. It's unconscionable. It's unethical. But it describes who this government is. They lied about the port. They lied about Smith's Barcadere. They've lied about everything of significance over the years. This administration would have you believe that spending $30 million on roads, paving roads that don't need to be paved, if you're coming from the eastern districts, effectively, they've taken 2 lanes, turned it into 3 lanes that merge into the one same lane, and they're calling that progress. That's called politics, ladies and gentlemen. And Stevie Wonder could see that something's wrong with that. And that's why change is necessary. I will never show up and lie. Sammy will hold me accountable. I hold myself accountable. The people hold us accountable. But that's what we're signed up to. There are no agendas. Nobody owns us. This administration is bought and paid for. They work for special interests. They don't work for the majority of Caymanians. And if you doubt me, compare your life as an average Caymanian in comparison to the cocktail circuit crew and certain people that fund the political machinery. Is your life better? Likely not, but I'll tell you who's really benefiting. The people that look after the government and how policy is made and decisions are implemented. And that's the difference between us and them. I want to work for every Caymanian to make sure that Cayman has a place where no Caymanian is left behind. Mm-hmm. Sammy is the same way, and I'm proud to be working with Sammy, proud to be working with Alric, proud to be working with Chris and other strong, principled people. Sammy's one of the most decent, honest men I know. And if you're in Red Bay and you're tired of the foolishness, if you're tired of representation that doesn't see it fit to hold a meeting for you during a campaign election, there's only one choice in this race. Sammy Jackson's going to show up and give you his very best because the guy is first class at what he does intellectually, but more importantly, morally, ethically, he's principled, he's honest, and he will represent you. That's why we're working together. We are bound by the belief in doing the right thing.
Mm. Johan, you had mentioned, perhaps one of the first before the campaign started, about what transpired in our legislative assembly at the time relative to commercial sensitivity, about deals and so on. And you talked about responsibility and accountability, openness and transparency, all of the things that we suppose to value and virtue. Maybe the public understands that, maybe not. I mean, how is it that the government can do what it needs to do in order to get things going, but then how is it then as the voters that we understand what is it that's transpired, or even what is to be transpired, if a government can get up in that privileged position of the parliament and say or not say?
Well, there's no privilege that applies to public contracts or contracts dealing with public funds, in my humble view.
Okay.
The only thing that could provide the government with a legitimate excuse for not disclosing these things to the public is that it's a matter of national security.
Okay, national security.
Something of that.
Or nature. Defense and those sorts of things. Okay.
Indeed.
All right.
But when you hear the Minister of Commerce and Planning standing in the LA answering a question put to him by the leader of the opposition about disclosure of a number of significant deals done in secret.
In secret?
In secret, between developers. Never disclosed. Mm-hmm. Between developers for large-scale development and either the ministry or the minister or someone involved on behalf of government, where apparently planning permission is guaranteed, which is actually unlawful, where certain fees are waived, right? Import duty waived, to the tune of, we understand in some instances, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Hundreds?
Tens, certainly.
Wow.
I've seen one for tens of millions, and I've heard of others that are more significant. And when as a Minister of Commerce and Planning, you're saying that is a commercially sensitive deal, you're acting in dereliction of your statute, your constitutional duty as the minister. That is the kind of thing that gets ministers fired and ends their political career forever in other jurisdictions. Here, we just blink and move on. And that foolishness has got to come to a stop. That is why I'm supporting Johan to run against my former friend, Mr. Hugh. Because I do not believe friendship has no place in politics, Dwayne. This is a serious business. We are running Mr. Mark Dyer can't seem to make up his mind whether it's a $5 billion or $4 billion economy, but somewhere in between there, I suppose. This is a significant business we're running here, this country. You cannot run it like that. This is not a third world country. We have a constitution that guarantees certain rights, that imposes certain duties on parliamentarians and in particular members of cabinet. They have eschewed all those things in order to create gains or opportunities for special interest groups. Classic example is the Legal Practitioners Bill, and which morphed into the Legal Services Bill, which resulted in the current Legal Services Act, which I believe is an existential threat to the economy of this country and the future of many Caymanians, not just in the legal profession, but outside the legal profession, because of its consequent knock-on effects. So the reason we decided to get into this race wasn't because we needed a job to do. Neither one of the two of us is going to get a uptick in salary from this. Let's not kid ourselves about that. The reason we got involved, Johan and myself and others who are in professional roles, is because we can see, we're looking down the road, and we're seeing that these individuals who are currently running the government are putting us in such a precarious situation, as was described by Mr. Paget Brown in the instance of financial services. The very thing that they say we are threat to, right? They have already destroyed, or almost destroyed, and we need to put it right. But there's more to it than that. Johan spoke to the port deal. We're now hearing, this is something I heard just 2 days ago, and we're looking into it, that there is a project manager here, still in situ in Cayman, working for the Public Works Department, actively pursuing an alternate plan for the port berthing facility, the cruise berthing facility. We have the name of the individual, we have a picture of him, and it's going to be investigated, and we're going to let the public know what it is. I know for a fact that at least one minister has been asked about it, and he has been very evasive, right? And when you hear those sorts of things, you understand that this government has no intention of changing its course, of changing the way it does business, changing the way it does governance in the future.
Okay.
So I say all of that to make the point. If the public wants change, and this doesn't just apply to Red Bay, it applies across the board, wherever there's a PPM or alliance incumbent. If the public wants meaningful change, they now have an opportunity. We have put ourselves forward as competent, credible professionals. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you like me personally or you like Johan personally. It's about whether you think we can do the job and whether we'll do it properly. That's what this is about. And we're willing to commit to that if given the chance. And if the public chooses to continue down the road that we're on, they will do so at the peril of this entire country, us included.
We're going to pause and take the break, come back, continue with Johan Moxo and Samuel Jackson. Stay tuned.
Let Cora keep my ground so clean.
The heart and soul of the Cayman people. Thank you for keeping the culture alive.
There's spread the news every day. From East End to Georgetown, down into West Bay.
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
It's only 2 species that we have, on the island.
Generations present.
Your voice, your choice.
It is in the best interest of the people of these islands.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
With your latest headlines, I'm Shanda Gallego from Radio Cayman's newsroom. Lyneth Monteith is the new Deputy Chief Officer in the Ministry of Education, Youth, Sports, Agriculture and Lands. Ms. Monteith launched her education career in September of 1981 as a middle school teacher. Since then, her career portfolio has spanned a cross-section of education-related roles, with 31 of these years served in leadership roles. Turning to international news now, the World Health Organization has warned that the world needs a reality check on the state of the pandemic as countries abandon restrictions despite 4 weeks of rising deaths and 7 weeks of rising cases globally. WHO's technical lead for coronavirus response said 4.4 million COVID-19 infections had been recorded across the world last week globally and expressed concern about global trends. A serving police officer from London's Metropolitan Police Force has been sentenced to 2 years and 3 months in prison after breaking a black man's knee in what the judge called a clear case of racial profiling. Charlie Harrison, 39, was sentenced Monday at Southwark Crown Court, London, for causing grievous bodily harm, the Metropolitan Police said in a statement. His sentencing follows a 5-day trial last month, during which he was convicted by majority verdict, police added. And thousands of machines used to refine nuclear material were destroyed or damaged in an attack at a key site on Sunday, an Iranian official has said. Head of the Iranian Parliament's Research Center said the incident had eliminated Iran's ability to carry out the process. The attack took place in a facility up to 50 meters underground, another official said. Iran has blamed Israel for what it called an act of nuclear terrorism. Those are your latest headlines here on Radio Cayman. I'm Shanda Gallego.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Explore your history. Explore your land. Explore your sister islands. The ultimate staycation experience. Your culture, your freedom. The land that time forgot isn't gone. It's your sister islands.
Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
Election Day 2021. History in the making.
Stay informed.
Radio Cayman brings you the latest updates from the polls and live coverage from our correspondents out in the field, including special in-studio panel discussion covering all things elections 2021.
Let's see if we can find a way that together we can move the country forward.
With Talk Today's Sterling Dwayne Ebanks and For the Records, Orrit Connor.
It may not be all rosy, the future of the Cayman Islands, depending on which road we decide to travel down.
Plus other guest panel members. Coverage starts at 7 p.m. Stay informed on Election Day 2021. 45 years of bringing you results. Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. In the studio, Johan Moxham, Georgetown North, Red Bay, Mr. Sammy Jackson. And to our listeners, again, our apologies for, their early interruption in internet service. So if you missed it, for 15-20 minutes, around the 1:30ish, we apologize. Gentlemen, I won't ask you to repeat some of the things you said, but if you wanted to, you were speaking some about the video Mr. Ian Paget Brown had posted. I can't expect you to repeat everything, and certainly with the same, but the inference
I don't know how much of it was lost to being.
But you made the inference that
truncated.
To a man of the caliber of Mr. Ian Paget Brown, for anybody to imply you.
I don't know what the public might have heard
Mm-hmm.
before I was cut off.
Yes,
but
sir.
I can certainly repeat it because it's worth of being repeated.
Yes, sir.
There was a question raised by the Premier about whether I had paid Mr. Paget Brown or not, which I can tell you that without fear of any sort of contradiction, I did not. Right? That is the absolute truth. And the really painful thing about that is that it to seek to impugn the character of a man of the caliber of Ian Paget Brown is really goes beyond the pale. I wouldn't expect that from a sitting Premier. That is a sort of pettiness that he is typically engages in, though, because he really is a petty man with much to be petty about. I really don't know what to say to that, except that certainly everyone in this country whose lives Ian Paget Brown has touched, certainly everyone who's worked with him professionally like I have, would know better.
Mm-hmm.
He is not a man who's for sale. He wouldn't be paid to say anything that he didn't believe in, and he certainly wouldn't say anything that's untruthful, and he wouldn't have taken it on himself to record that video, which I played in unedited, uncut form, which I know that's not customary, but I wanted the public to see the simple, unvarnished truth emanating from that video, and I believe that the real reason that it must have got the attention of the Premier is that it rang true, and it spoke to facts that are already well known within the financial services industry. There are many people in the financial services industry that have said the exact same thing to me already. Right? I am not in the financial services industry. Johan is, but I can tell you, I have lots of friends who are. And there seems to, in particular amongst the accounting firms, a number of people who have had grave concerns about the lackadaisical approach of the government to promulgating legislation it promised. And it continues to use this narrative about, the FATF keeps moving the goalpost. It wasn't that the goalpost was being moved. It was that we were promising to promulgate amendments to the legislation within a specific agreed time frame, and we were waiting to the last minute to do it, and then it didn't get done, and then we ended up on the EU blacklist last February, right? And the same thing repeated itself this February with regards to the FATF grey list. And Mr. Paget-Brown laid that out clearly so that, ordinary folks outside, like myself, could understand. I certainly understood it very clearly. And it was something I spoke to before. I said that earlier. I don't know if I was cut off. So
that's fine, yeah.
On the Chambers Forum, with the Premier sitting next to me. He didn't refute it then. But perhaps he didn't pay attention because he thought no one would pay attention to what I was saying because it might seem like politics. But when it comes from the voice of authority, like Ian Paget-Brown QC, I think people are paying attention now. Right? But the facts are there to be verified for themselves. And this is one of the things that the PPM-led government, led by the Premier, has held up as its card, so to speak. Right? It's the great defender of the financial services division, but it really isn't. There again, they represent special interests within the financial services industry to the detriment of the industry itself. It's listening to a small group of people, albeit very powerful, very wealthy, very persuasive people, and it does things in accordance with their wishes. The Legal Services Bill and the Legal Services Act is the manifestation of that. And that is why that I've said consistently, even in its former iterations, when other people, like Mr. Panton was proposing it, that it is intended to significantly benefit a handful of already very wealthy people to the detriment of the nation at large. That seems to be the modus operandi of the government of the day. Across the board. They tend to act in the interests of those who they are associated with. I don't know. I have no evidence of what benefit flows from those sponsors or those persons, those special interest groups, to the government. I hear all sorts of things, but I have no evidence yet. But you can certainly see that's what's motivating them. I can see what the benefits that the special interests are getting out of it. That's pretty visible. Right now, we're getting lots of roads paved. For example, as Johan alluded to earlier, we paved more roads in the last few weeks than we paved during the whole administration before those operations commenced. Why is that? It's because this government treats this country with absolute disdain. It thinks it can consistently insult our collective intelligence, right? Use us and play us like fools, bait and switch whenever necessary, and by our vote right before the election. And the money they've spent on advertising themselves as, Mr. McLaughlin and his 11 disciples, as I like to call him, on all of these LED panels all over the country.
It actually hurt my eyes.
If they could just divert some of those funds to some of the needy, right, in their constituencies, I think that their chances would be improved the re-election. Not that I'm saying they should vote by votes, but if they're doing it anyhow, that's what we keep hearing, then they might as well stop spending all of the money on that unnecessary promotion.
What hazard?
Because there's that aspect of it as well. But really and truly, this government, in my humble opinion, is an existential threat to the future of this country. It has always been. Even in its former iteration, it was. And my worry is that if folks don't do the right thing tomorrow, right? Because I'm not doing this for my benefit. I don't think Johan is doing it for his benefit. In fact, I know he isn't. We are doing this for the benefit of the people we love, right? And we're doing it for the benefit of the future of this country, so that our kids and grandkids, all of our kids and grandkids, have a place to live in, have a better quality of life. Because what folks need to ask themselves at the end of the day and doing is, has the quality of life for each and every one of them improved since the last election? Because when I ask that question, I get a resounding no. If you're failing in that regard, you know, you have all of this wealth and affluence in this country, and the ordinary folks aren't seeing any of it. What is the purpose of it? Who does it benefit? Quo bono. That's what you have to look at. Who benefits from that? Right? Education is failing because of a dysfunctional system with a minister who has done absolutely nothing but hold on a chair for the last 4 years, apparently. We can't continue down that path. We have a cost of living that's out of control. We have no consumer protection. We have, despite the fact that a lot of work was done on that, we have not even engaged the public in a necessary consultative process on things like consumer protection. The LRC, the Law Reform Commission, did extensive study on it. Again.
Okay.
5 years between 2010 and 2015. There's draft legislation. Why hasn't that been put out for public consultation? Again, quo bono. Who benefits from that being parked on a shelf gathering dust? After expending all those government resources, all those years, doing something that every first world, free and democratic country has in its legislative portfolio, so to speak. Every country that I know of has consumer protection legislation. We don't. We don't have any sort of anti-competitive practice provisions or legislation. We have some provisions in certain laws for certain industries, but we don't protect industry, in particular Caymanians within industries like the tourism industry, for example. Lots of complaints there. An industry that's now beleaguered by being shut down effectively for over a year. And there's folks in that industry who are worried because they were already under attack before the COVID lockdown. So who really is this government working for? That's what the people of this country need to ask themselves. Are they working for us? Are they really representing us? And with my opponent, for example, when I go house to house and I hear, well, Alden has never been here to my house before, I have to wonder, how in God's earth can you represent people if you don't know them or you haven't spoken to them? But yet he has time to talk about, I don't know my way around Red Bay and I got to hire somebody to take me around, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. What is it to drive from house to house or walk from house to house and knock on doors? What do you think I'm going to get lost in Red Bay? I've heard it all, but it's the sort of pettiness that is used to attack someone when you have nothing of substance. Because he has nothing of substance to attack me with. He is not my superior in any way, shape, or form, in my humble opinion. I have far more experience at the bar now than he ever had when he entered the political arena. He has not been doing so well as a politician. He gives lots of speeches. He has traveled a lot, represented the country. And by and large, he's a competent man. That's the sad thing. But has he really applied himself to the job? That's what folks need to ask themselves. Is he really doing a sterling job? Pardon.
That's a high bar. That's a high bar.
But is he really doing the job that the public should expect of him? When you hear what Johan addressed a while ago, 17 or 16% raise in salary, right? And some of the upper rungs of government getting a lower raise, 7.7%. We're talking about the people that make $180,000+ a year, right? They all got a bump up in salary, a significant bump up in salary. No one else got anything. You know, the folks who are really struggling with the cost of living, the folks who are on the ground doing things, including during the lockdown, the frontline workers that helped us get through COVID. I didn't hear them getting any pats in the back, right? Every once in a while you assemble them for a photo op, but that's purely for political promotion as well. You know, at what point is this country going to say enough is enough? I hope we've reached that point. I hope tomorrow is the day of reckoning that this government deserves. I really do.
All right. With that, let's pause quickly, take a short break. We come back. We're going to 3 p.m. today. We got Johan Moxham, Georgetown North, Railway candidate, Sammy Jackson. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
Things just got a bit hotter on Island. Come in today and order the new spicy Korean subs at Subway. They're sweet, spicy, and especially satisfying. Stop in and try the pulled pork with spicy Korean sauce, or the chicken with spicy Korean sauce. And you can message WhatsApp at 929-4658. Order online or use Let's Eat or the Bento app. The spicy Korean subs at Subway in 2 flavors, extra saucy and extra spicy. Subway, eat fresh.
The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. We're here for you. Are you aware of the performance of your pension plan? The Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan provides quarterly fund fact sheets for our members to stay informed with the plan's performance. For the year ended August 31st, various life cycle funds provided returns between 9.2% and 16.5%, and our all-in expense ratio is currently the lowest it's ever been, a record low at 0.72%. Visit chamberpension.ky to review our fund fact sheets. You can see the performance as far back as 10 years. Remember that pensions are a longer-term investment strategy. Focus on the long term rather than the short-term returns. The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan continues to perform for you.
Ouch! Yeah, the hand sanitizer work good too, you know. Join us
for another Siwa Saying this Friday. Mosquito 2.
Mosquito bite me.
Okay, Ray, are you ready for another Siwa Saying?
Yeah, man, we got to continue with the mosquito. So, mosquito 2.
Mosquito 2.
The itching.
Itching. How you spell itching?
You know, you had to ask my father. That's what he says all the time, itching. Mosquito 2. The itching. Bring your rubbing alcohol.
The sequel to Mosquito 1.
We had so many calls, we got to do another one.
Change stagnant water in every pot. Mosquito can make babies.
See what I'm saying?
Is a special feature of Talk Today with contributions from the National Museum, a language, history, and culture show on Radio Cayman 89.9 and 93.9 FM.
Mosquito 2, bring on a rubbing alcohol. Hand sanitizer work good too, you know. The itching. Join us. See what I'm saying? April 16th.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waging to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. And again, our apologies for the internet access. It seems that there's intermittent interruptions and, you know, our sincerest apologies. We do have Johan Moxham.
I don't want to be the conspiracy theorist, right? Yeah. But the day before election, when you've got Sammy Jackson running against the Premier and myself running against the Minister of Planning, Infrastructure and Commerce, I think it's a bit coincidental that the internet keeps dropping, but, you know, maybe it's just me and I've watched too much Ancient Aliens or something like that.
and I'm not going there, but we feel... Anyway, so apologies for that. But John, you were sharing that this is a pivotal time in our history, a crucial election like all. And as voters, we go tomorrow to mark the scorecards and participate in the only way voters can in an election in terms of going to the polls on that day. So to decide how we're going to cast the ballots. You presented some interesting things, but share with us some more as to where maybe as voters in Georgetown North and in Red Bay in particular, you know, why you feel that they should vote for Johan Moxham for Sammy Jackson.
Thanks for that question, Sterling. I'll just keep this as basic as possible. after all the positions have been stated, the websites have been created, the manifestos have been written, this election comes down to knowing the difference between right and wrong and choosing representatives that are either working in the best interests of Cayman for the majority or the incumbents who are working for a select few. I can say to you, and I will say this on behalf of my colleague and running mate, Sammy Jackson, nobody owns us. Yep. Nobody has put any sort of large donations and given us anything to run our campaigns. The PPM and the Alliance can't say that. Okay? When corporations and individuals, wealthy individuals, make substantial donations to a political party, and they're crafty enough to do it before nomination day, that's significant, but because we don't have any sort of election campaign sort of reform. But I'm aware of the fact that millions have poured into campaigns on this island. You're talking to two individuals that are self-funded. Nobody owns us. Therefore, we can take positions that are in the best interest of the country. I don't answer to anybody except for God, my family, and hopefully the people of the Cayman Islands who will vote for somebody that is honest, sincere, has principles, has substance, and knows the difference between right and wrong. If you are tired of getting the short end of the stick, if you are tired of representation that only comes to deliver a chicken or a ham or beef on Christmas and then tries to give you some little thing to keep you ticking over, you deserve better. The reason why you should vote for Sammy and myself is because we represent the change that is needed in the governance model. We represent leadership that knows the difference between right and wrong. I will never sell out my principles, and I will never sell out this country. We live in an amazing country, but for too long, too many people have been left behind. There's about 60% of our population that no longer matter, and the decisions that are made by this government are to help everybody else except our own. When you look at the race to 100,000 population, ladies and gentlemen, there are people in this country right now that live below the poverty line in squalor. No running water, no electricity, no flushing facilities, so on and so forth. They tell us that we're successful. They tell us that everything good they're doing is in our best interests. Yet there are more people that are struggling today than there ever been in our history at a time when the country is at its most successful. That, ladies and gentlemen, says to me, if you want things to continue in your life the way that they've been going on over the last 4 years, 8 years, it is your prerogative to continue to vote for these people. But if you want better, and you know you deserve better, and you want quality representation that will work for you, fight, deliver, pursue policies that will help the majority of Caymanians, we are the guys that are doing so. We are putting aside our professional careers and ambitions to try and help the country. I don't want a reward. I will never tell the country I gave up X to run. I am doing this because I know I'm a better candidate than Joseph Hew. I know that my ethics, my morals, my standings, my professional abilities, my competencies make me a better qualified candidate in order to represent my people and to help govern the country. Because right now, these guys don't know the difference between right and wrong. You look at the decisions that they make. Sterling, if you got convicted for anything, you would be fired from your job. Only in Parliament can you keep your job and be protected by your fellow parliamentarians. You know why? They will always do the politically expedient thing. Doing the right thing doesn't matter to them, and that's wrong for the country.
Jan, if I can ask you, only, this is not meant to be disparaging, but only to understand some of the Constitution. We work under the Westminster model. We understand that the leader of the political leader of the country, whether it's the Prime Minister in an independent nation or the Premier or Chief Minister, whatever the system is, so in a system, the Premier, that person is ultimately responsible for the Cabinet and for the Speaker is accountable to. So that the buck would fall there. Is that the case? So that we can say, well, it's the Speaker or it's the Minister A or Politician B. But is it the Premier under our system, or is it the Governor, or is it a civil servant? that's ultimately responsible for the political workings of the country and to hold the ministers accountable? Who is the... Where does the buck stop?
It's the Premier. He appoints the cabinet.
Okay,
under
so...
Section 49 of the Constitution.
Okay, so politically, constitutionally, the head of it is the Premier. The buck stops there.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. Yeah, I just want to clarify that. Okay.
So, perhaps this is a convenient time to address that. One of the myths that's being promoted by the PPM.
Okay.
Right, which is that they're more organized than the independents.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right? And they claim that they have structure.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they say. They have a leader, a group that can easily pass policies. But the truth is, that save for one exception, being Miss Rivers, who has been now put out to greener pastures, and a couple of, let's just be honest, intellectual and or political lightweights that they've bolted on to the PPM. Neither of whom have any real chance of winning a seat. This is the same lot that we've had for the last 4 years. We know what they're about, right? So to try now to reinvent themselves and project this optical illusion that they're the only answer because the rest of them, you know, that one that those ones that the Premier described that John John's rally as the smart one over there, the good one over there, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he says. You don't want intellectual people in the house. You want us instead. That's how I read that.
Mm-hmm.
That was a damning indictment on himself and his colleagues, in my view. You don't change horses midstream, he said. This is the narrative they've been spinning to create the optical illusion that they're the only viable option. That's what this is about, right? And I've had people ask me about it. So here's my position on that. They don't have sufficient numbers to automatically install the Premier. Why is that? Because the PPM is only running 8 people. They've bolted on 3 more, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But they haven't joined, including 2 who have been at their side, right? So are in political bed with them for the last 4 years. So you got to ask yourself, if they're such great believers, if they're such a great inextricable connection, unbreakable connection between the PPM and its alliance members, which is a unique concept in and of itself, why is it that those 2 members haven't joined the PPM? Right? Because if they did, then the Premier could stand up and the rest of them could stand up and say truthfully, we have the ability to instantly install the Premier under Section 49 of the Constitution after the next general election if all of us are successful. Because you have a party, that is to say a registered political party, has to win the majority of seats in the next election in order to install the Premier without it going to vote on the floor of LA. Because that's the only other option. Now, the problem is the last 2 elections. First of all, in 2013, the Premier and his government after the fact literally breached the Constitution by creating a government after the fact and got away with it by adopting Juliana. And then they added on to the number sufficiently to create a party after the fact. But what Section 49 says is that they have to gain a majority of seats of elected members of the Legislative Assembly. That connotes gaining them means you won them in the election, not after the election, right? And that is the problem. They are literally lying about the fact that they have the ability to instantly create a government after the next election. They do not. They're going to try to get away with it because they've created this nebulous concept of an alliance, meaning some registered party members and a few other people who are aligned with them.
The bolt-ons are your friends.
The bolt-ons, I call them.
Okay.
Right? To make 11 or 12, whatever the number is. So, how does that present itself? If we look at that rationally and logically and we interpret the provisions of the Constitution properly, how does that, how is it that they can guarantee that? They can't. It's simply they cannot do that. So that is simply a myth. Now, they'll continue to insult our intelligence. I think up until the last minute that they have that ability. But it's going to come down to horse trading again, because not all of them are going to win. This is the fallacy of it all. The reason we haven't come out as independents to say this is our leader or that is our leader is because we don't know, right, who will win. We all feel confident.
Honest truth.
We're all capable. The simple truth is no one knows what the outcome will be, right? But let's say this. Given the assembly of competent people we have on our side of the table, there's a much better chance that we'll get a better pick for a premier than they have. Whether or not Mr. McTaggart, greatest respect to him. He might have been an impressive accountant. I don't know. I'm not qualified to opine on that. But I don't think he's an impressive politician. Maybe I'm not, but he isn't. Right? I can tell you this. We have people on our side of the table who can. We have people, independents running in this election who are quite capable of taking up that task, as much as any of their forebears, including the current premier. So this tendency to cause concern among the voting public for their benefit is the sort of, unfortunate way that they continue to promote themselves. And I truly believe the people of this country are smarter than that. I hope so. And in any event, what's the utility of them being able to readily pass policies if all their policies are bad for us? The only thing they got right was managing COVID. And that's ostensibly right, because they didn't follow the constitutional path on that either. Luckily for them, the outcome was a good one.
Because of the people you shared?
But even though the premier seeks to take patent for that, he doesn't own the patent that. The people of this country, all of everyone that came together, as Johan said earlier, they followed the prescribed plan. And after all, we wouldn't have had COVID in Cayman at all. Whether that makes it puts us in a better or worse position, I don't know. I'm just saying I'm reminding the public, we would not have COVID on these shores if it hadn't been for the fact that once again the Minister of Tourism made a decision based on political expediency, currying favor from a special interest group, i.e. the cruise lines. That's why we took that cruise passenger on shore and infected one of our hospitals. That's where it came from. That was patient zero. Let us not forget that. And we paid a dear price for that. We were incarcerated in our home at the premier's will, right? That's how he made it sound. And that's effectively how it worked out for many months because of that. So let's give him credit for that too. Since he owns patent on COVID, let him own that part of it too. Let's not forget that, because the outcome of that is yet to be. All of the knock-on effects of being locked up for that long are yet to manifest themselves in mental health issues, etc.
Big toll.
Not only that, but damage to businesses. I'm not saying it wasn't necessary. I'm not saying it wasn't prudent. I'm simply making the point that we don't know yet the consequences of all that. We cannot do the cost-benefit analysis.
Well, I almost lost my father, man, as a result of that.
I think you lost someone in your family who was afraid to go to hospital and had a heart attack.
I almost lost my father. I mean,
well, there you go.
That is, being anyway.
But the point is, this PPM-led government, including its recently separated partners in the West Bay District, the ones that have not yet quite divorced themselves from the PPM government, I assume they're in waiting to rejoin. They have an established record, a very bad one that has left a bad taste in the mouth of just about every person in this country. No matter how much credit you give each and every one of them or them all collectively for doing one or two things right, there's so many other bad things. And I alluded earlier to the cruise berthing facility. That seems to still be an ongoing project. That's lying in abeyance, perhaps like the West Bay Partnership, to be revisited after the election. So if we want more of that, then you can vote for PPM, because that's the kind of policies they stand for.
Yeah. You referenced earlier the person who's still employed, was it PWD, as the cruise ship thing with Jacob Bubble?
Yeah,
whatever that.
Project manager for cruise port facility at Public Works.
So even though the project publicly was the date, you're saying that
this gentleman was overheard recently having a conversation with someone about a certain project that he was managing, which was the figuring out how to reconfigure the cruise berthing facility to either eliminate or minimize dredging, but it could only accommodate up to 3 ships. Was his concern. So that simply tells you if that is true, right? So I wasn't there, but someone who I believe in told me that. And certainly the LinkedIn profile exists. I can read it up before the close of this program.
If you're still online.
And yeah, if we're still online.
Johan, are we still online, Johan?
But
apparently we're still up, but Sammy hasn't said anything controversial yet, so that's why it's working.
Okay.
So,
sorry,
but
Sammy Jackson, Johan Box. I'm just sorry, I got late up a little bit. Sammy, sorry when you were talking. No, I still reeling from what happened last year. I mean, that being in prison and not accessing my father, and not getting his medicines and getting seizures in the ICU and almost dying. That still pisses me off, man. I'll be honest with you, man. That's a hard one to swallow.
Yeah,
I understand.
I understand completely. You know what occurred to me the other day when I saw one whole side of the road shut down. I had to wait in line to get past it. The paving machines are working feverishly. I had no idea we had that much paving equipment in this country. I guess it must be what's left off from paving the airport. And they've decided to redeploy it. But it would have been actually sensible to do that when everybody was locked up in their homes.
But there was
no cars driving on the road.
But it was the election year.
I see.
Sorry.
That's. I thought that was purely coincidence.
Yeah. Right. A friend said, "Well, we should election every year. We get a lot done."
Yeah, we'd have fresh roads every year for sure.
Anyway.
But so it's true. They keep promoting it. Also, the other myth is that you know what you're getting with PPM. I just spoke to that. Yeah, you definitely know what you're getting with them. And we really have to be careful, right? That if the Premier likes to talk about being given a mandate, even when he's not given one. He's repeated that mantra many times in Parliament about the mandate that he was given by the people. What mandate? The last election, a majority of constituencies returned independence. Right? The fact that they were cajoled or incentivized or whatever to join the PPM-led unity government, right? Notwithstanding, that's what the electorate of this country determined. So I want to know where he gets this mandate from. From what? He coincidentally ended up with the largest number in the small groupings of people that were aligned with each other in the last election. So the PPM were in no better shape after the last election than they are right now. And this is exactly what he intends to do again.
But they ran a larger contingent last time.
They indeed they did.
Okay.
They did. Okay. Absolutely did. And they lost a number of important seats as a result of their policies. If anything, they've gotten worse because they lost some of their competent members.
Like Marco Archer.
Yeah. They lost Wayne. I mean, he and I disagree on a number of things, but you can't knock his competence.
Yeah.
Their house was in disarray after the last election, and they were desperate, and we saw all this ration and horse trading and all of that sort of thing. I really hope it in my heart of hearts that we don't have that after this election. This country doesn't need to see that kind of uncertainty, but he's using that fear. This is the cute thing about it. That was engineered by all of that back and forth the last time around. Using the fear of that, because a lot of people were on edge. I dare say a number of his special interest friends must have been really on edge, because there was a time when it looked like the PPM were lost. There was a new government, new sheriff in town, and with a array of new people, whose political careers have not yet been established. And that always strikes a chord of fear, especially in those groups of people who have a lot invested in the current government of the day prior to the election. That is what you see here now too. That is why you keep hearing about, those independents. Like that's almost a pejorative term now. I guess that's why they had to come up with the term alliance, right? So that the word independent or independence didn't malign Austin and John. But they keep saying that over and over, hoping it'll take root. And they're just trying to generate fear amongst the voting populace that an independent can't do anything for you. Here's what an independent can do for you, Dwayne. We have single-member constituencies. That wasn't my doing. The guy who championed that the most is the current sitting premier. He told me once that was the answer to McKeever. That's the funny thing about it, right?
You had to get rid of McKeever?
Yes.
Okay.
That was the only way we could deal with him. But it didn't. It actually showed up his position. It backfired, right? But the fact that we have single-member constituencies dictates that you need some level of independent representation for each of the constituencies, because it's a sheer idiocy to say that you have direct representation vis-a-vis independent constituency if through a single member constituency if it's not represented by an independent. You follow me? You need, if you're going to say that each constituency has to have special representation, direct representation of that constituency.
You need
you need that. That would connote a scenario where you have the ability as a representative to do things specific to that community.
So one of the things for one person, one vote was that the accountability and responsible authority would be much easier to identify, because you got one person that can't hide amongst, for instance, in West Bay where there was 4, Georgetown there was 6. You now have one person for that constituency.
Put it another way. How can you directly represent a single member constituency if you have to toe the party line on every issue?
But that's what they want, though, and that's what people need to understand. Instead of having a bunch of yes men that are beholden, because the way that it works now, I say this with the greatest of respect, there are people that are elected right now that are seeking re-election that would never have the sort of job that makes the sort of money that they're making now. And they will do whatever it takes to keep that job. They will say yes to everything, knowing that it's right, knowing that it's wrong. The objective for them is to get re-elected, because it's like winning the lottery. Okay, when you get elected, when you look at the salaries that are on offer, when you look at the benefits that come along with that, people defend their money and they protect it at all costs. And in doing so, they're prepared to compromise their principles and make decisions or go along with decisions that are not necessarily in the best interest of the country. And the way that they are bought is because there's something called a stipend for an allowance for everything. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are a parliamentarian, your worst case scenario is you're making $10,500 a month. You then get a $5,000 constituency allowance. There are many MPs right now that do not have a constituency office. Okay? So they're making $15,000 out the gates, and then if you are a councillor or a parliamentary secretary, you're going to make another $2,000 to $3,000. There are people elected right now that have 0 O-levels, 0 professional experience at anything successful. They've never run anything well. Nothing. And they're making $17,000 a month. Free medical, free pension. That's the stakes that's at play here. And that's why they sell out and they agree to all things. Because you know why? This is their winning lottery ticket. But here's why I'm saying all of that. Understand the value of your vote. If you vote for a incumbent cabinet member, just know that that cabinet member is making $225,000 a year over a 4-year period. Ladies and gentlemen, that is over $850,000, $900,000 plus in base salary. So when they show up with a chicken and a turkey and a ham and a $50, understand that is a drop in the bucket, and understand the people that finance these campaigns. They're the ones that they're using the resources to try and influence you and impress you. Understand the value of your vote and vote for people that'll give you a chance. If you live in a house that has no electricity, if you live in a house that basically is not fit for human habitation, and you've been living like that for 4 years, vote these people out. If you are a young Caymanian professional looking to find a place to start your family and your home, and you have to move to Back and Beyond in order to buy a 2-bedroom apartment that'll cost you $250 because everything in Georgetown costs $600,000 or call it $500,000, vote these people out. Their policies are not about the advancement of Caymanian people. They are building a country for everybody else. This race to 100,000 population is about population growth and high net worth individuals. And there's nothing wrong with having wealthy people here on the island. But as a government, your responsibility is to provide and ensure that your people are benefiting from these policies. And right now, this government do not care about you. They've had 4 years, 8 years, 12 years to show you they don't care. Look at the rising costs. They haven't addressed that. Look at the cost of real estate and housing here. There are Caymanians that are going to be living with their parents for a very, very long time because there is nothing geared towards the advancement of Caymanian people. If you are working class, if you are middle class, you deserve better. In the same way that we can look after super wealthy people, why can't we look after our own Caymanian people? That's what Sammy and Johan brings to the table, and that's why this government, if you vote them back in, you deserve what you get because they've shown you who they are. They are not working for you. They work for them. I want to work in the best interest of the majority of the Caymanian people. I want to be a part of the solutions to help address cost of living, housing, health insurance. Right now, people can't afford to pay health insurance, CUC bill, water bill, car note, bank note. It is impossible, and these people work hard with 2 jobs. If you send your kid to a private school, that right there is a mortgage. That's $1,000 a month easily. We should be in a position where we can say the government can help subsidize education if you are sending your kid to a private school. You know why? Because we give away hundreds of thousands of dollars in concessions to wealthy developers.
Millions
to developers.
Millions,
no, let me give you one. You see that Astor Group project down the back there? That's $700 million worth of concessions over an extended period.
Almost $1 billion.
Did you just hear what I said?
No, I missed it.
Okay.
How much?
That's what they're doing. Now, I understand medical tourism. I understand the need to have other industries. I am the most pragmatic person in the world. But if you're telling me that a group that have done nothing and produced nothing can be guaranteed $600 and $700 million worth of concessions on duties, licenses, and import duties, ladies and gentlemen, this government is not working for you. There has to be a value for money proposition, and there has to be a formula where we understand why they're doing this. My opponent is desperate to keep certain development agreements quiet and out of the public domain. You know why? If you follow the money and things are investigated, I am saying this on Radio Cayman, public radio, and if the authorities are doing their job, there will be a thorough investigation. And when I'm elected, anybody that is involved in any corrupt act and has abused their office, I will do everything in my power to expose those activities, because if the little man on the road who can go to jail for smoking a spliff that costs $70,000 to house him, but yet senior officials, whether they be public officers or elected officers, are involved in nefarious activity that involved or can be deemed to be corrupt, why aren't they being investigated? Do you think McKeeva Bush was the last person that was deserving of being investigated for abuse of office? Do you think he's the only person that merits that? Ladies and gentlemen, wake up and understand that this government not checking for honor. It not checking for Caymanians. It's looking out for others. And you have a chance to change things for the better by using your voice and voting for change. These guys have gotten fat off the lamb, and there are a lot of piglets at the trough. That stops tomorrow when you vote for change and you vote for people like Sammy Jackson, Johan Moxham, Alric Lindsay, and the other quality candidates that know the difference between right and wrong. And that's what they fear. That's why they fear us, because they know you have nowhere to hide when people like us get elected, because we're going to do it right and we're going to hold people accountable because we hold ourselves accountable and we know the difference between right and wrong.
Earlier, as we speak to Real Big candidate Sammy Jackson, Georgetown North, Johan Moxham, earlier, and we've got a few minutes left, and to our listeners, we are in a paid political statement. We are going until just before 3 p.m. But you referenced earlier that seemingly, and I say this carefully and respectfully, but it's a general accepted perception today, last year, last election, the one before, that those in office tend to be contemptuous, condescending, and disrespectful to the voters, looking at Adam as being stupid. Now, both of you have shared from the outset this conversation today, conversations prior, last year, the year before, that we have astute voters. They're very intelligent,
Absolutely.
They're very engaged, they're very informed, and they take offense at being seen as stupid. Now, seeing the respect that you have for voters, it's a refreshing change in terms of the input, but you also
people, they're not. That's the problem. This government looks at things pragmatically when it comes to politics, right?
Mm-hmm.
They look at people as voters. That's why they only pay attention to them every 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
They're people. They're decent, hard-working, honest individuals who want a better quality of life for them and their children and their grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
That is the recurring theme that I'm hearing. I'm talking about even people who live in upscale residential areas like Patrick's Island.
Mm-hmm.
You know what they're worried about? They're worried about when they invest their savings in their children's education, that their children will be able to come back here and find a professional job and get an appropriate salary, because there's a lot of that going on, right? You've heard me on this radio show many, many times lamenting all that was wrong with the legal profession. It's not just the legal profession. In fact, most of the professions, probably with the exception of the accounting profession, which has done remarkably well. Why is that? Why do you think that is? Let me explain. I'm gonna just say it. That is because at some seminal moment in the past, Caymanians, conscionable, competent Caymanians, I'm talking about people like Dan Scott, decided that they were going to do what was best for the profession and for Cayman at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't done that with the legal profession.
Mm-hmm.
Far from it. And that is why that profession has thrived. That is why there's no complaints there. That is why they can. There's trust, right, in that profession amongst the practitioners. That's why people believe what they say. They're credible, competent folks. And guess what? That is exactly the side of the financial services sector that this government is not listening to.
Mm-hmm. You said earlier that, obviously, in Patrick Brown, I referenced it again because I remember reading a speech, back in 8 years ago in the Grand Court at opening session. He talked about the challenges plaguing the legal profession. Everything everybody knows, but he was really not treated like that.
Well, lots of people said all sorts of silly stuff like, "Oh, he doesn't even really live here, does he?" Really? Well, he certainly has. He had at that time. He had an office here. He was working here, and since when has that disqualified anyone from opining on matters pertaining to the legal profession? We have people who were given lots of audience to ventilate on many important issues, who have all sorts of upscale residences all over the world, bought with money that they earned here. By the way,
Sammy, just to interject for a second. So, the allegation is that somebody who was speaking the truth had to be paid for speaking the truth.
That was it. There was no challenge to the veracity of the statement.
Right. Okay.
None.
But let me give you one better. Here are the facts, ladies and gentlemen. The Cayman Islands government, under this current administration, has made a blacklist, or on a grey list, and will make another blacklist in June. That happened on the watch of Premier Alden McLaughlin and his government. That negatively impacts the number one pillar of the Cayman economy.
Indeed.
You don't need to like me. You don't need to like Sammy. You don't even need to like the gentleman that Sammy referenced. But these are the facts that you're dealing with. So if you're in industry and you understand that the financial services industry represents over 60% of the GDP of the Cayman Islands and represents over 40% of revenue to the Cayman Islands government, you cannot continue to trust people that don't understand the significance of the bad decisions and the ineptitude and incompetence that they carry on with. They spent 4 days debating and slagging off and berating members of CPR, myself included, under the referendum bill in December 2018. They should have been focused on the financial services laws that they needed to pass in order to avoid the blacklist, because everybody in industry knows what the expectations are. The only people that don't seem to care are the elected individuals. That includes the Premier, his cabinet, and his government. They're all a bunch of bobblehead yes men. But we pay the price for their bad decisions. So vote for competent people that get it. That's the moral of this story.
All right. So, gents, I know we're almost night time, and I appreciate you paying for this. I'm not going to commission for it, but thanks for spending money with us. It's a paid segment, but share with us now, perhaps in the next 3 minutes or so, some closing thoughts and whatever else you want to repeat.
Just
remind
close
us.
off on the point I'd made earlier, Dwayne. Because I call them the political party of mythomaniacs, the PPM. They generate a lot of myths. This myth that they're promoting, that independents can't work together. Have they forgotten history? We've only had parties for the last 20 years. All the important legislation that underpins the success of this country was promulgated in the 70s and 80s and through the 90s. Where were the political parties then? We were better represented back then. We had competent people who came together, worked, focused on the issues at hand, ventilated on their positions on those issues, had heated debates in Parliament. But at the end of that process, because it is an adversarial process after all, that's why you have an official opposition to the government. At the end of that process, we produced solid, decent, meaningful pieces of legislation that then secured the future that we are now enjoying, or we had been enjoying up until this lot got the helm. They have systematically dismantled important pieces of legislation. They have gutted, for example, the development planning legislation in order to empower their friends to make an easy go of getting applications approved without going through any sort of meaningful process of evaluating the infrastructural impacts, the environmental impacts, or conducting any sort of inquiries, EIAs, etc. That was done deliberately, started in about 2014 by the predecessor PPM-led government, led by this Premier. When people wonder why there's a proliferation of development without any seemingly any consideration of consequent impacts on infrastructure and environment, that is where it started. November 2014, 11 months after they gave us the National Conservation Law that they herald as a game changer, right? Patted themselves on the back saying that they're now environmentalists. They literally, what they did then was to move to the development planning legislation, right? Perhaps in response to the outcry from their friends in the development field, and gutted the planning legislation, right? Destroyed the process that we had promulgated in 2001 to make sure that we put those large-scale developments like the Ritz-Carlton that had come online earlier under scrutiny, right? And then they took a process that should have been built into that, what was then Section 6, which is the development agreement concept that comes out of the UK legislation, something I had been advocating for from before I left government in 1998. They took that and perverted it and turned it on its head. Development agreements are supposed to provide for the developer paying for infrastructure. We took that and turned it around. We created, this government and its predecessor created a multitude of development contracts where in exchange for simply building a project, a developer got all sorts of freebies. Planning fees waived, infrastructure fund fee waived, until it inadvertently changed the legislation to prevent that. That's a whole different story. They had an agreement that they signed with a certain large developer that was in flagrant breach of a provision they brought into effect in 2016. So to some extent, it's incompetence as well, Dwayne. It's not just deliberate tinkering for special interests. There's some incompetence involved. And certainly when you look at it from the big picture perspective, as in terms of governance, it is, at the end of the day, gross incompetence at best, right? That when a government takes and destroys the legislative frameworks that are supposed to guarantee the quality of life of the people of this country. Because when you look at the development plan itself, that's what its primary objective is, enhancing and protecting the quality of life of the people of this country. That's what it's about doing, and that's what we're about.
All right. So are there any meetings or announcements that you wish to share with people? Are you anything going on tonight you want to tell people about?
No, well, no, I'm just going to be touching doors, touching people, you know, trying to convince the undecided that I'm the better choice for Georgetown North. I think, you know, at the end of the day, it's about what you want as a country. I am of the view that what we have right now isn't working for the majority of Caymanians, and people have been crying out for change and an opportunity to hold the government accountable. Well, that chance is tomorrow morning starting at 7 a.m. and when the polls close at 6 p.m. You have every opportunity now to vote your conscience. You're not beholden to anybody, no matter what promises have been made or what you may have received in form or fashion. Vote for the best candidate that will give you, your family and this country a chance where Caymanians will matter. Because right now you have a incumbent government that have proven they are not focused in on Caymanians. There's a race to 100,000 people. If we can't get it right for the 40,000 Caymanians that actually live here, if there are people living on the streets in squalor, no electricity, no water, if people can't afford to exist and survive in their own country, that is down directly to government policies, government initiatives that aren't there to help you. You therefore have the power to change those players and those policies. That chance comes tomorrow. I'm humbly asking for your support. I ask that you vote for Johan Moxham, candidate number 2 for Georgetown North. I want to work for the country. I want to work for all Caymanians. I am not owned by special interests. I'm not beholden to anybody. I will hold myself up to a high standard and be accountable and demonstrate transparency, honesty, and always be the same man that you're hearing now. We need change. Caymanians want better, and the Cayman Islands deserves better. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And we have Johan Moxham, Georgetown North, Samuel Jackson, Red Bay. Gents, thank you very much.
Vote smart.
And to our voters, please go out tomorrow and vote. Continue that high turnout. And join us tomorrow evening. Polls close at 6 p.m. They will open at 7 a.m. Close at 6 p.m. God's willing, at 7 p.m. join Art Connor, myself, and our panel of guests as we take you through the election night returns. God's willing, will be here. Miss Norma will probably bake us some chocolate chip cookies, and we have a little touch of some cassava cake before and probably after. Until tomorrow, my friends, have a wonderful, blessed, productive, enjoyable, and as usual, civil and high voter turnout on election day tomorrow. Until then, be blessed.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. And Royal Fidelity